bright. Good evening. Good evening. I'm so excited to be on here tonight with the one and only Stephen Banoon. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you, June. I'm so glad to get to be with you this evening. And I have to be very honest, I have looked forward to doing this broadcast. So I apologize I missed it the other day, but, but at least we made it now.
Yes, Bride, I was telling Steve tonight how handsome he looks. If y'all think Steve looks handsome, give him a thumbs up.
Oh, don't do that.
Steve, I tell you what, we've been together a long time, Steve, and we have seen a lot of things happen in this world over the past 3 years. But something has come up on our radar, called the Silk Road. And I talked about it one night on the news, Steve, because I know you don't have much time with us tonight, so I want to get right to it. Somebody wrote me and said, the one you need to interview about the Silk Road is Stephen Banoon. So I am going to open the floor to you, sir, because I would love for you to explain to us what you know. And I may ask questions,
Sure.
here and there. Go ahead and talk to us.
Absolutely. So I appreciate so much, June, that you prayed beforehand, because I think that that's very important that we pray about things that are going on. The Silk Road, as we know, the modern day version of it, it is a remake of the ancient Silk Road. But the modern version, they claim, came out in 2013 with Xi Jinping introducing the Silk Road Initiative, the One Belt, One Road Initiative, to reestablish a global economic system the way it was done during the times of the Orient, back even in the days when Israel was a nation. In reality, Xi Jinping was not the one that created the idea. It was actually a Hungarian Jewish man that did. I wished I had his name with me right now, but I don't. And that's because as I was trying to put things together for tonight's broadcast, I began to find even more new information as a result of this Silk Road Initiative. It is basically what the whole Silk Road Initiative is creating a brand new globalist economy for, as the book that you had on the screen earlier that you wrote, June, the One World Government, or the One World Order. I forget exactly how you titled that. And this is what's going on. This is why we're having all the wars that are happening right now. They're all part of this plan. Bringing down the United States is one of those plans. If you've ever looked at the Silk Road trade routes that they are establishing, both by rail and by maritime trade routes, the United States is completely left out. Mexico is left out. In later drawings, a little bit of South America, but not a whole lot of South America either. It's not there. When we begin to look at the maps for the Silk Road, what we actually begin to see is we're only seeing the China going to the west of China, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Israel going as you go south, of course, Saudi Arabia. The northern Africa is a big part of the Silk Road as well, all down through the South Pacific as well is part of those trade routes that are being reestablished, things like that. A little bit, they take the Silk Road right into Germany, and then they have a hub that runs back over towards Moscow. And that's about all you ever see of this. And I began to really look at this when this was being put together, along with the BRICS, what is called BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I think it's Sudan, if I remember right, that made up the nations that first began to create a new economic hub. And June, going back, I would say 6 years ago, I already said that'll be the new world order system. It'll be the new economic structure that will replace the dollar. And
Okay, now Steve, I gotta stop here.
Sure.
Okay, now the BRICS, I've covered this the other day. It is where these other countries are gathering against the United States. I believe that they are preparing for the fall of the country, like the Great Babylon.
Yes.
So I found something very interesting. Back in 2017, President Trump was fighting. Let me share the screen here to be a part of the Silk Road. And it's like, isn't that funny? Because he is the one that, fights so hard. Look at this, to say that he is so anti China. All right, this is dated May 18th of 2017. Trump's support for China's One Belt, One Road initiative is bad for the U.S., but good for the world, is what they say here, right? But look at here, it says, although candidate Trump supported the OBR initiative, his position clashes sharply with his anti-China trade rhetoric. Then you go over here to I-24 News. The title is this is U.S. firms ready to get on China's Silk Road project. Now, it talks about it in several of these articles here. But Steve, can you answer to us about how this involves the infrastructure? Because basically China is putting like an underbelly of infrastructure across the world. Is that right, Steve?
That is true. And Junie, here's where it is. It's a huge picture is what happens. We're going to talk about General Wesley Clark and the 7 nations in 5 years being taken down. Why? We need to talk about the entire, going back to the 90s, the U.S., basically our industrial complex, not really the industrial, our manufacturing sector of the United States began to, late 80s, or mid 80s, I should say, early 90s, begin to move overseas to China, Taiwan, and Philippines, and places like that. And they began to produce a lot of our high-tech stuff. Well-paying job companies were being moved out of the United States and over into China and other places in the Far East there. And it was all a systematic move because they knew, and when I say they, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the world bankers, et cetera, they knew that there was coming a collapse of the United States because they had wore the dollar out. The dollar was had no more value, no more good use. And so they were already preparing for a global economy that would have to change, and they would have to leave the everything that has been structured that we're used to. And of course, the World Bank, they're loaning money to all the nations and things of that nation, that aspect as well. And they moved all the manufacturing processes over to these areas because they knew what they were going to do. And then, of course, later BRICS comes into play, and that begins to build the new economic power structure that will replace the dollar.
Yes. Now, what do you know? Is there a connection, Steve, with the Silk Road of the dark web? Is there a connection to that, what they titled the Silk Road there, to the Silk Road here? Let me show you why. Because when you look here, okay, let's go.
I'm getting a call from Shanghai, China, as I say this broadcast. Can you believe it?
No way.
Let me show you. Is there a way to, let's see.
Yes, you can share screen here.
It's on my phone. Can you see it?
Yes.
It was Shanghai, China.
That? They don't like what you're talking about.
I guess they don't, sister.
Probably, for sure. Okay, let me show you this, because this has to do with I believe this Silk Road has to do with the World Wide Web, right? Now, there's a guy named Ross Ulbricht who did the Silk Road, and the Silk Road that he did was the one that was on the internet, the dark web. But look what happened here. You have President Trump, when he was in his, let me find it over here. in the end of his 2020 year, sought to bring, oh, here we go, sought to get him out. Can you believe that? He sought to get him out of prison because he went to prison over this Silk Road that he did, where he was basically the mafia in the dark web. And then Trump wanting to get him out in 2020. But he's still in. But guess what happened? All the money that he owed the government suddenly appeared in Bitcoin. So it's kind of like that other guy. He got free of it. But I was wondering if is there a connection between the dark web Silk Road and the China Silk Road?
I do know that there is a connection with the cryptocurrency and
Yes, that's what
Silk Road.
yes.
Yes, and the thing is, this is one of the things that I had gotten early on information about, and that is stay away from the cryptocurrency. And the reason I was being told to stay away from it is because they would collapse it. And not that they're not going to have their own cryptocurrency, they will, but they would collapse the other independent ones. And that, in fact, that's why you see some of those banks that were collapsing, and they're basically federalizing those banks, and then they're stealing all of their assets. Same thing with the nations
Yes.
that are going bankrupt, like Egypt and other nations that they're going to end up again. They're going to be in the negative. They can't pay their debt back to the International Monetary Fund. So what are they going to do? They're going to go bankrupt. They're going to be nationalized, and they're going to have their assets taken. This is all part of this globalist plan that they're doing. And of course, as you mentioned earlier about the United States, and you said the word Babylon, they're going to totally bring the United States down. We're going to be a third world country.
And it's because of the outlaws, right?
Well, yes. And we've been sold out. I mean,
I call them the outlaws.
Yes, we're sold out, Sister June. Listen, I remember back, I want to say it's around 2018, I did a couple of broadcasts about China's non-challenged bid for the building of the port of Haifa in Israel. There was no bid whatsoever except China. China took the contract. They built the port, prepared it for the Silk Road Initiative, part of the trade route there, and also for the military hub of it. And I really put up a fuss over it because there was another port coming up in Ashkelon, further south south of Tel Aviv, and China as well was totally no contracts being put out there. Israel had to change the policy, bring in other bids, and then I got contacted by their Mossad people, and they said, you got to quit beating up China. And I said, why? I said, is the fact of what they're doing is crooked. And they said, China will be the next world superpower. The United States will go down. They are going to be the next world superpower. We work with them. We're the ones that made them what they are today. And of course, then we see all the different wars and avenues, like in the case of General Wesley Clark, when he said 7 nations would be taken down in 5 years. Couldn't understand why, but they were going to do it. And then you look at those nations.
Well, not only that, Steve, what about them putting in their bases all over the United States? What is up with this?
Well, that's
and the balloon that just flew across. I mean, what United States military would have put up with that? Right. Traveling across the entire country.
When they sent the spy balloons up, one of the things that I knew about that particular issue, directly out of the circles of the Joint Chiefs, was that it was a green light that China was preparing for Taiwan. And rather than using satellite technology to spy on our infrastructure and what we're doing here, they use the balloons because the balloons are far closer and they get better resolution. And I said, well, what were they looking for? And specifically, our power grid system to see what is underground, what's not underground, because they're going to take that out before they hit Taiwan. And the other thing that they said that they were looking for was to see whether or not which bases truly were mothballed under Bill Clinton's tenure. And of course, they knew what and the bad thing is Biden is so in bed with China Biden just allowed the balloon to float across without giving an order to shoot it down.
I mean,
Right?
what the world? Crazy.
It is crazy, June. It's like it's totally insane. But by the way, like I said, Israel is even part of the BRICS nation. We know that Saudi Arabia, Egypt, they've joined in. Now Mexico's talking about going in. Israel has been a secret partner of the BRICS program early on. They've always kept everything brushed under the rug. Israel will be the head of the New World Order. Their country will sit as the dominant power of the globalist world order. And Israel, it will actually be a tri-city state. They're going to bring Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Israel together and make a tri-city. This is one reason why you saw the Neom city that the Saudis are building.
Yes, I did a story on Neom.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, Neom City includes the famous mountain found by Ron Wyatt some many years ago, believed to be by archaeological finds as the Mount Sinai where God comes down and meets Moses and the children of Israel in the wilderness journey. Why is that inside of their Neom city, their futuristic city? That's a conjecture. Don't know the answer for sure, but I find it very interesting. I'm sure it'll be part of the tourist attraction things in the event in the near future.
Right.
But the big thing, though, to me is when General Wesley Clark talked about those countries, even in Africa, Libya, Sudan. You had Lebanon, north of Israel, Syria, Iran. They needed all of these to change hands of who is in power in order to control the Silk Road itself, because that's where all the commerce is going. Now, another part of the Silk Road that a lot of people have really overlooked, and I hit on this about 6-7 years ago, that was Russia taking over the Arctic region there in the North Pole and creating and breaking up the ice there to create a trade route for the Silk Road there. And, you know, June, I would think, why up there? It's all frozen, right? Well, they know something's going to change climatically on the planet. Something is about to take place that's going to cause that to
Come
not
on,
be
Steve.
so
That's
icy.
right. That's right.
All right. And now,
well, I got to say something that is a coincidence to that balloon flying over. Steve, look what happened right after that. We had all of these trains and all of this stuff just collapse.
oh, that actually was done intentionally.
It's like, were they purposefully targeting like certain areas? I mean, what do you know about that?
I know quite a bit about that aspect as well. And I'll go into that, and then we're going to hit Europe. We're going to go backwards a little bit and current events.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the train derailment, I actually inquired about that directly because there was another incident that happened before the train rails began to derail. We had a situation where there was a migrant that had come across the border illegally that was part of a group that were secretly bused to Washington. That's not the one that hit the news where they bring them up. You know, Texas brought them up. No, this is a group that was brought there secretly that the CIA was bringing in volunteers that are crossing the borders to train them for tactics of war, kind of like the Manchurian Candidate.
No, I heard this, Steve. I heard this. I interviewed this guy named Aman Jabi. You ever heard of him?
Never heard of him.
Okay, listen, Steve. This guy is the Google whistleblower. He's the one that was a part of inventing the camera for the smartphone.
Okay.
So he tells everybody what they're doing with this technology. He was talking about that, Steve. Yes, he was.
Yes. So that's what they did, June, is they brought this guy here had escaped the CIA training facility, and he had ran into this doctor's office. He was all kind of frantic, but he didn't know there was a CIA guy sitting in the very office that he runs into. And now he doesn't intervene. He only listens because he can't intervene. He can't, divulge who he is. And suddenly he began to hear him talking about this secret base, and they're being trained for at the end of this year that we're living in to be a part of bringing about an overthrow of this nation, doing military campaigns. And the doctors and all thought, okay, the guy's losing his mind. We got to get him in a psych ward, etc. But the agent that was sitting there said, "This guy is not crazy." He said, I know just from listening to him that his information is accurate. Well, then we started
Mm-hmm.
having all these train derailments. Now, I've been telling people now for about 2 years, stock up on water, stock up on water. I don't care if you got a well, doesn't matter if you got a well or anything. Have you I don't know how much you would want, I have no idea, but at least have maybe 3 months supply of water on hand to drink, because something is going to happen to our water system. And what it appears to be, June, is that part of these derailments is for contamination, and they are doing it intentionally. I
Yes.
was told, I couldn't be told directly, but I was just told it's part of the same op about the same guy, like you heard about that going in there. Same things happen in this nation. And then if you'll notice currently in the news, they're talking about all the suddenly now they're spreading the message throughout all of South America and everything. This is your opportunity to get in the United States. They're not going to send you back. It's taken up to a year to process that. They give you a date and they set you free. What are they doing, June? They're doing just like they did in Europe during the first beginnings of the Syrian war, which
Mm-hmm.
that was orchestrated as well. In fact, that's so biblical, it's not even funny. That
Right.
particular war there. I mean, you can take Micah 7, the fruit of their doings, bringing about a total wasteland of Syria. Yeah, sure, exactly, right? So anyway, what were they doing? They were forcing out in the Middle East, they were forcing all these migrants to go inside of Europe, and even from Northern Africa, they were allowing them to just go over in the droves, huge amounts of droves, not just Syrian refugees. You had Iraqi refugees, you had Libyan refugees, Sudan refugees, every refugee you could imagine from every country, all violent men, mostly men, very few women whatsoever. And
Yeah.
they embedded all within mostly Western Europe. Why? We talked about it years ago when it happened, when I was living in Europe. Me and Yana, we would talk about these things. They're preparing for the total collapse of society there. It's going on global. Same thing with the wars, the Ukraine war. Germany is going to get hit next. That'll be the next big thing. Russia and Germany will get into it. And don't think Putin's the savior of the day. He actually is the one that just recently came out and said, we need a new world order with, listen to this one, June, you'll get it, with just laws. Think
Well,
about
he
that.
is a part of the World Economic Forum Young Leaders.
June, do you
So,
know that Edward Hudot, who is a very famous Chabad rabbi that later converted and became a Russian Orthodox Christian, he was flying to Israel back before Putin ever came into power on the plane with Putin's cousin, another
mhm,
very prominent Jewish politician. They went to Israel. They did what they were doing to get help support for Ukraine. They were flying back. And when they did, he says, yes, he said, my cousin Vladimir Putin is going to rise up to take the reins of power in Russia. And the purpose was to rein in the oligarchs that were not in favor of the Chabad organization inside of Russia. And of course, Edward Hudot was asked by Menachem Schneerson, the famous Rebbe for the
no
Chabad
way.
organization, to be, because
Yeah.
he was the mayor of Kharkiv. Kharkiv is the very major battlefront in Ukraine. He was asked by him that when we go to collapse Ukraine, we will have the Russians believing they're taking back their motherland, and we'll have the Ukrainians thinking we got to kill off all the Slavs that are in the country. Or I'm sorry, to fight for their independence and freedom from Russia, but in the process to kill the Slavic peoples of Ukraine and of
Yeah.
Russia. And when he saw that, he refused to be a part of it. That's Edward Hudot. He is a Ukrainian former mayor. He speaks publicly. He doesn't speak in English, so you have to translate his information. Amazing, amazing information. And yet, what is it? All of this is a Silk Road Initiative. Israel, we're going to help Israel to hit Iran. But again, for what purpose? Overthrowing the government so that they can reset it up for the Silk Road Initiative. And then China will take Taiwan down once we're bogged into a war with Ukraine with Russia over in Europe. And I was already told Biden is going to act like we're going to try to protect Taiwan, but we will let it go. And why? Because
Mm.
China needs Taiwan as part of the new economic structure, because Taiwan makes up 50% of the global economy now. Think about it.
Yes, now it's because they have that big smart city.
Yes.
I mean, the smart cities, a part of this China's Silk Road is this global infrastructure, which I call the spider legs, is the global Internet of Things. And so, the social credit system that they have
Yes.
there in China.
Yes.
Okay, every country has their kickoff of this global order that they want. You have China does that. Ukraine, I believe, is their app. You may have more insight on that, but I believe for the technology side is the app because they're able to do their chaos. They're able to turn in their neighbors and all kinds of stuff. The global ID, in other words,
Yes.
over there in Ukraine. Then you had Australia, who's doing Queensland, the lockdown facilities. So each country has their testing. Well, Israel's doing the first, um, not the robot, but drone city. They did the first drone city. So what they do is they have a testing place. Well, that's the same with China. Okay, so China has all these millions or billions of people, and they tested the social credit score. We know that's going to be a part of our global ID, Steve.
Yes.
So they're the ones putting it in out there so that they can help everybody across the world do this social credit. Do you know anything about the advancing of the social credit system and the global ID? What do you know, Steve? I'm trying to get as much information out of you as I can tonight.
Well, the details of the social credit score, I don't know as much, but I do know that it is going to be global. And but
Yeah.
when you speak about the technology as well, I do know that we have a robotic army already that will replace. I know that there is 500,000 robots that are like human. They do not miss. They will not make mistakes. They can wound you, kill you, whatever the case may be. Um, that is going to be used in the very near future to control mankind. Um,
Yes.
and like you said, the social credit score, that's how you will get certain amounts of money deposited to your account.
Yes.
Um,
That's right, Steve.
yeah,
Yes.
you're going to, and I think, June, it really comes down to, even like in the case of the Noahide laws, and this is why I've been such a, Yana, of course, spearheads that, but I've really kind of hit that issue kind of hard lately myself as well, because
I know it.
Christians don't seem to understand, if Israel is the head of the New World Order, and this is why you're seeing Netanyahu with such a strong right-wing government.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be successful. Now, everybody says, well, they're not going to be able to pull it off. It's just a little minority in the government that's trying to do it, and they're losing. They pulled back. Well, they only pulled back temporarily. Gavir, though, is being given a huge militia to deal with it in the very near future. They wanted to test the waters, is what they wanted to do, to see how the people would react, to see if the Christians will stay on board, okay? Because this has nearly cost my family their life already for speaking out against these Noahide laws. And so the thing is, what they're trying to do, June, is they want to bring this out, and because that will become the entire the Noahide laws. In once Israel is the head of the New World Order, then they will say the law will come out. But they've got to bring about a chaos. The only way Israel can get away with it, they've got to bring everybody under war. We'll be under war here. We'll get hit by Russia. They're provoking Russia to make sure they do it. Europe will be decimated. Then we'll have all the civil internal strife. And then, just as they've been touting at the United Nations and elsewhere, as you already know yourself, June, from the book you wrote, they're going to bring out these Noahide laws. And one thing I shared with people the other day, I said, look, when Jesus was on trial, basically, and I said, when the Pharisees, which, by the way, in order to be an Orthodox rabbi in the Chabad organization, you have to be able to trace your lineage back to the Pharisees of Israel 2,000 years ago. All right.
Wow.
Notice the government connections that the Pharisees had. They controlled Pilate. They even said, if you don't put him to death, you're no friend of Caesar. They controlled Caesar at the time.
Yeah.
And of course, the Pharisees were all for Rome coming down and crushing the temple because they wanted to do away with the Zadokite priesthood so that they could take over. All right. That's something people don't even know about in history, but it's written in
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
It's there, right? But what was the thing? When Caiaphas, the high priest, he brought Jesus in for trial. Okay. See, now once he's got control of this, he says like this. They brought many witnesses, finally 2 false witnesses. And what did they say? This guy said if he could destroy the temple and build it in 3 days. Well, the reason it's false is because he never said he would destroy it. And he wasn't, of course, we know he wasn't talking about the temple as his body, but he was saying if they destroyed it, he would raise it up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But that still wasn't good enough. Caiaphas then says, I adjure you by the name of the living God. Are you the Son of God? Now that's very important. Watch what he says.
Yeah, it is in this
Are you
day.
the Son of God? He said, thou sayest. As soon as he said, thou sayest, rips his garment apart and everything. What further need do we have of his blasphemy? You've heard it for yourself. He is,
Yeah.
what do you say is worthy of? And they all called out for his death, right? For saying what? For Jesus, for the very question that Jesus answered. And Jesus didn't say I was the Son of God. He asked him, are you the Son of God? And he said, thou sayest. Now, do you think as a believer in Jesus Christ that if you say that Jesus is the Son of God, that you're any different of a blasphemer in the eyes of the Pharisees of 2,000 years ago or even
Come
today?
on.
No, you're the exact same. There's no
Come
difference.
on, preach
Right?
it.
So what's going
Preach
to
it.
happen, sister?
Amen.
They're going, as Rabbi Mizrahi out in New York, an Israeli rabbi that lives in New York, very prominent. He said, according to our Torah, 8 billion idolaters need to die. And then he gets and he starts naming them. He gets to the Christian. He said, there's 2 billion Christians that believe Jesus is the Son of God. This is idolatry. According to Torah, they are to die.
But the Torah is I see what you mean. But the Torah is the first 5 books.
Oral Torah, Tanakh, as if it's the real deal.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, and of course, as Tovia Singer says, another prominent Jewish rabbi, he said the 7 Noahide laws are on the surface. He said we have 100 sub-laws. And in those sub-laws, in the same Tanakh where the 7 Noahide, because 7 Noahide laws were nowhere in the 5 books of Moses. They are only in the Tanakh, even though they sound like the 10 Commandments. And it says in there that if you violate any of them, capital punishment by beheading. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Now we know why Israel be on there. Now we see Putin, who's supposed to be like some great guy, saying we need a new world order with just laws.
Yeah, but let me tell you something, Steve. A lot of people think that it's only the Republicans, like, the conservative right, like Netanyahu bringing in, the right government. But let me make an announcement to everybody tonight. The New York governor, Holscher, who is a Jew, is putting in the highest court, the judge on the highest court. And she already tried once to put a far right person who her Democrat Senate cast down. Now she's doing another one. She, a Democrat, putting in a far right. And like with Biden and Trump going at it, saying that Biden is saying, I'm the most Israel. Trump says, no, I'm the most Israel. But they both are.
That's right.
And the fact that the Republicans and the Democrats have been working together with Biden, making him the most bipartisan president in all time. Why? Because the Republicans have been partnering with Biden, passing all these UN laws. So they're all together, Steve.
Sure they are.
And it's headed towards the Noahide laws. I'm so thankful. Listen, I just want to make this public announcement. That book that I wrote, The Noahide Laws, I gave honor to Steve and Yana in the front of the book because I have their interview in there that talks about their knowledge of what. So I'm so thankful for all that y'all have done to expose that. I really mean it.
Well, I appreciate it, sis. And of course, as you already know, Yana is the brains behind that.
Yeah,
And
yes.
she really brought that out. And I know before June, I think I've told you even this maybe privately, you know, the 21st degree Mason is called a Prussian Noahide.
Yes. Oh, I was so shocked to learn this. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so he's such an insane protocol. And I remember one day my wife asked, so distraught, still distraught over all of this. And she said, why 21 milliliters? Why 21? The even people that practice natural medicine that use that as a therapy at most use 3 mils. That was 7 times greater. 7 times greater. And I sit there one day and it just come to my heart. I said, it is a 21st degree Mason. I said, do you remember the video I did about the Noahide Masons? I said, if you remember the Masons, and I don't consider the Masons to be a good organization, but because I use the term infiltrated, they were infiltrated by very prominent Jewish members back in the 1800s who rewrote their bylaws. And that was one of the laws they wrote into their system of Noah.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So think about it. Pretty weird.
Yeah. Well, Steve, listen, I want you to, if you can, about the Silk Road, can you kind of, because I know you don't have much longer to be with us, can you talk to us about why is this important for us to know what is the Silk Road? I mean, because let me tell you, the White House is talking about it. I mean, this is in conversation within our government. So it's something significant. And I'm hoping you can put the pieces back together for us.
Sister June, I'm going to kind of give a conjecture on it.
Okay.
When I look at this whole initiative, I mean, granted, yes, we have a new economic system, things like that is part to replace the old system. But at the same time, my thought is cataclysmic events that are anticipated to happen on the earth in the near future. I don't know exactly when those events are supposed to transpire for sure, but in all the different intel settings I've been in and the discussions that we've had regarding what the earth will go through, there are certain areas that are going to be massively affected. Even like I said, it's interesting to see that Russia making a trade route at the North Pole. You know, and I remember years ago, I said, tell me they don't know what's coming for them to be willing to do that. That means there's going to be no ice there, because even if you break it up, it's still going to freeze back up again. So, you know, it's like, how are you going to make a trade route out of something like that? And then why would they go to such extremes, Sister June, extremes of changes of trade routes in the world? Why is the U.S. left off? Why is lots of South America, parts are not, but a lot of parts of South America are left out? Why is all this happening like that? Mm-hmm. All right. To me, they know that there's change coming. And if there really is going to be an anticipation of change, I mean, I know some very scary things that I've been told, but I don't want to create panic for people because a lot of this still, in my opinion, would be considered a probability or a conjecture. So, you know, the thing is the changes are supposed to happen. They're going to take place. I believe that, for example, too, what is it? Abaddon and Apollyon, we read in Revelation chapter 9, be loosed from a bottomless pit. What is the bottomless pit to begin with? To me, it's another dimension. And we have on this planet that I'm aware of, we have 6 hadron colliders. or like CERN over in Switzerland, France, etc. We have 6
Yes.
of these on the planet, sister. We have one in Antarctica, 2 here in America, the one over there in Europe. Russia has one, and we have a portable one down in Australia that we use. They're all running at full capacity. They literally can pierce that veil. And I think that they're basically going to cause a collision course. They're going to if you want to put it blunt, they're going to let the devil out of the box. And then what will take place on this earth then? Where are we going to
Right.
be at? And what are we seeing too? We've got, like, I've got this one book right here. Yana ordered this. It's called Aliens, Angels, and Demons, and it's by Rabbi Ariel Tzedek. You can see him on the History Channel. And Sister June, you'd love to read this book, I'm sure, if you get a hold of this thing here. This is a guy that says to the Jewish people, a very prominent rabbi, he goes, if you see a golden reptilian hand, don't be afraid. He's your helper. And he also says on the History Channel, he said the Messiah is to come from inner earth and all of his helpers. I'm like, boy, what has that guy been smoking? I mean, come on, right? I mean, that's a whack job right there. That's a crazy guy. And forgive me, I hope that don't sound like a bad expression. Like wacko is what I mean, crazy, but Sister June, you've got like, Rabbi Lieberman, who says that the serpent was the helper in the Garden of Eden. He wasn't a bad guy. He was only trying to help us out and get us some more knowledge and insight. They are messing with things that they ought not be messing with, sister. They really are. Yeah. Just like it was when the fallen angels came down, and when we read in Genesis, it looks like, they came down where they taught us how to use a little bit of makeup, and they taught us how to make a plow for the farming donkey to pull behind him and everything. But, when we go back and we compare that scripture to what technology has been unearthed back then, they probably, I believe all the things that we see in Genesis, but I think the thing is that they just didn't record everything that they taught us. And
well, I'm sure of that.
Right. So, who knows what else was taught?
Hey, talking about what they taught us, going back to technology, what you was talking about happening in our government.
Yes.
Steve, listen to this. Not only in New York are they pulling this off, with the deal of, putting in a very far right head court person, a judge. Listen to what they're doing in New York. That attorney general, the one that's going after Trump, it's all a facade.
Right.
Okay, she did an appeal on the ruling that judge did on the quarantine ban. Remember, Governor Hochul tried to pass that where they could arrest anybody, and put them in quarantine and hold them as long as they wanted to without any trial or anything, as long as they wanted to. Do you know that for 8 months they stayed silent and just now went and did an appeal on that? Why would they appeal that if there's not another pandemic coming? That's one thing they're doing.
The pandemic coming too.
Okay, let's talk about that. Another thing they're doing is the let's see, it's that the V and the deal with Trump is such a farce. Okay, that guy, the mayor that's going after Trump, do you know that he's now putting in these dogs, these robot dogs, to be the police there in New York?
They're prepping the people, Sister June, for that. Those dogs are just, they're so minor compared to the technology we do have. Now, I will tell you something.
I bet.
I'll tell you something interesting, right? I'm sitting there. This was, remember when Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence got raided?
Yes.
I was sitting with his former advisor when that happened. He hands me his cell phone, and I'm reading Donald Trump Jr.'s text to him,
Lord.
step by step. of what was happening and the way that they were responding to it. Now, you want to talk about a really inside look of what's going on? I got an
I
inside look
bet.
that day. Now, but it also caused me to realize something different. So I asked his advisor, and his advisor was the Russian. He's the one that deals with Russia. He worked with Putin, so he knows a lot about Putin. And I said, "You've always told me that these presidents are controlled by an echelon above them." He would say, "You have level 3 is a president or a world leader. Level 4 and 5 are people like Soros and Kissinger. They're over these world leaders."
Wow.
Right. So then he said, you go to level 6 and 7. He said, these are the Rothschilds and those type elite like that. And he said, basically, there's 5 men that run the United States. He said, Kissinger is one. No, I'm sorry. George Soros was one. And he said, I can't tell you the other 4. He said, but I don't think you would know their names even if I told you those names. And so I knew all this. So I asked him, I said, but wait a minute, I'm watching Trump Jr. freaking out over what's happening in Mar-a-Lago as if this is not just a controlled scenario,
shocker.
right?
Yeah.
I said, how does that work? He said, on the level of 3 with world leaders, he said, in the case of Biden versus Trump, he said, they really are fighting for power at that level. He said, because they want to be able to control things for their friends that are multi-billionaires that they owe debts to. He said, that's why, he said, that fight is actually a real fight. He said, but the group above them will use that in order to control the outcome. If they want Biden in power, they're going to use whatever they, like in the case here now, as you said, what's happening to Trump right now is all to do what? Is to lift him up. He was sagging in the polls. He wasn't doing well.
Come on.
Right? I think that, and I said this when Netanyahu and Trump went out, that Netanyahu and Trump will come back in. And I asked that question to this friend of mine in D.C. I said, if Trump and Netanyahu come back, I said, you already know that the Jews consider them the Mashiach ben Yosef and the Mashiach ben David, the Messiah of David and Joseph. That's their doctrine. And so, because they take it from Daniel's prophecy, they get it mixed up, but it's all right. I said, if they believe that, I said, what do these people think in D.C.? He said, they look at them like the 2 witnesses.
What?
He said, they look at them like the 2 witnesses. He said,
Trump and Biden?
No, Netanyahu. Trump and Netanyahu. He said, they will come back on the scene. And he said, you're probably right, Steve. He said, I don't know for sure. He said, but I can see where they will try to bring Trump back in. And he said, and if it's successful, he said, I heard them say and use the terminology, it'll be like the 2 witnesses. Now, the thing is, sister, they want the evangelical support behind Trump.
Yes,
and they want it behind Netanyahu. And when you go against that grain, like when Yana wrote that article, and I think you published her article as well, immediately our website was taken offline. Immediately.
Yeah.
They have and I've got one of the best webmasters on the planet, and we're hosted all over the place to keep it safe, and they can still knock us off the line. I mean, the things, the capabilities and the technology is unbelievable, but that's really what's going on. And where were we going to go with this on this? I forgot now.
Well, because we was talking about them being the 2 witnesses. We're talking about Netanyahu. Now, we've talked about this a lot. What is happening to Netanyahu is a prelude of what's about to happen to Trump.
Yes.
Trump, I mean, just today, Trump is talking about going after the FBI when he gets in office. He wants to get rid of the justice system. He wants to overhaul our entire government.
They want, sister, and look, what DeSantis is trying to do and passing these laws in Florida, these what they call quote unquote anti-Semitic laws, is what they'll do across the entire United States. But the only way they can pull it off even here is to cripple the United States. The only way evangelical power will gain control is to cripple this nation. And then
Yeah, I'm
once they're
sure.
crippled, then they can come back and say, look, this is all this chaos happened as a result of this. Now Trump is back in power. And don't kid yourself. They have backup plans. If Trump's not in power, DeSantis might be the guy. If
Come on,
DeSantis can't do
amen.
it, then they'll bring up maybe Nikki Haley.
Yes.
Whoever the best Zionist is at the time is who they'll bring in.
She is just as Noahide as they are. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Very,
she
very,
is.
very outspoken about it. And I'll tell you something, Sister June. I know very prominent evangelicals that they look like they love the Jewish people and all this kind of stuff. And if you only knew one in particular, and I will not call her name, but
Yeah.
she is very prominent, very political, and all of her donors are Jewish. And she told me that personally.
Well, I bet if she's working with them.
And and just like what was the one girl that ran for president not too long ago?
Michelle Bachmann.
Michelle Bachmann. Michelle Bachmann
Yes.
wrote me and asked me. I'd done a video, very nice video back when I was pro-Zionist. I have to admit, back in those days, I was pro-Zionist. And I did a beautiful video about her courageous stand when she stood for Israel at this one particular time. And she writes me and she said, Stephen, I need you to take that video down. You did, because I was showing her stand for Israel and against the Catholic Church. And I wrote her back and I said, Michelle, why would you have me take that video down? I said, that's an amazing story, amazing thing that you did. And I thought it was admirable. And I saw the type in the Bible of you standing, when I wrote the video about it. And she writes me again and she says, I can't go into why. I just need you to please remove it for me. Okay. So I did. I honored it. I took the video down. And then the next thing I know, she runs for president of the United States, right? And the Vatican had written a piece and said, Michelle Bachmann has cleaned her slate and is no longer anti-Catholic either.
Wow. Well, she is the one who believes in dual covenant in Israel. Just like John Hagee.
Right. See how messed up that is?
Yeah, it's real messed up. Very messed up.
My family, my wife's father, he was Jewish, not practicing Jew. My family as well. Again, we were all what they called the renegade Jews and stuff, but I've always had a heart for the Jewish people. And even though I say the things that I say and we point out the evils that are going on in Israel, there's one thing that I beg you to do for the Jewish people more than anything. Try to win them to Christ. Because, listen, there is no dual covenants. I did a video in the book that I wrote, Jim, look, I would have to rewrite this book now. I wrote this book many years ago, Israel, Are They Still God's People? And in that book there, when I wrote that book, one of the things that I brought out was dual covenant. Perry Stone's wife asked me to send it to Perry. I did not know that he was like a dual covenant person as well at the time.
Yes.
But in that book there, I was dealing with the idea because there was an ideology of Jehovah's Witnesses, not that they believe in a dual covenant, but it was similar to that. And I said in the book, I was talking about that story, and I said, there's no way there could be a dual covenant. I said, Jesus, the Son of Almighty God, is going to come down and take a bride, and his first bride are all Jews. I said, that is punishable by death according to the Bible. You cannot have your father's wife. I said, no, there's no such thing as a dual covenant. That settles the argument. I said, you can't say, well, the Jews have Jehovah and the Christians have Jesus. Well, then what about all the Jews that were being baptized in the name of Jesus Christ? And Paul said, how is you a chaste virgin as a bride to Jesus Christ? Okay,
y'all watch out
your daddy's
Steve.
wife,
He's
you can have her.
Right now.
Eddie. What a mess, right? So
it's the truth, Steve, because that's going to get us killed. This is the part that's not funny.
No, it's not.
The anti-Semitism laws that are going in everywhere, even the Attorney General in New York, I was going to show it on the news tomorrow, is talking. She's really big into anti-Semitism, So it is coming in
Yeah.
everywhere, and that's what's going to kill the church. Because if you believe Jesus is the door, the only door to heaven, you will be killed.
That's right. So it's
Now,
coming.
Steve, I know that you have to go because you can only give us an hour tonight, but I just want to thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I really look forward to you and Yana being at my wedding next week.
Yes, yes, we will.
So
We will be glad to
excited.
be there. And if you want, Sister June, if you want to, when you're done tonight, if you want to send me a some kind of file of this, we'll load it over on INL there for it to reach out to more people as well.
I sure will, sir. And I tell you what, Steve and Yana are the speakers at our women's conference this summer in June. So I'm going to show this commercial as we go out. Steve, I love you, brother. I love you, Yana.
Your husband.
Can't wait to see you in your bridesmaid's dress because she's a bridesmaid. All right, sir. Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.